Hi, and welcome to Two CPAs and the Mic, the podcast where we talk tax, finance, and all things related to business. Whether you're a business owner, working professional, or someone who wants to start a career in accounting, this is the podcast for you. Hosted by CCK Strategies partners Jeff Frable and Sarah Mays, we dive into relevant business and tax matters with working professionals to make these topics less intimidating, relatable, and dare we say fun? Let's get down to business.
Welcome back to another episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. We are covering relevant business and tax topics. We're applying straight talk, practical information without the jargon and stuffiness that generally is associated with our industry. As always, I'm Jeff Frable with CCK Strategies. So excited to introduce my co-host, Sarah Mays. What's up?
Frable, I'm so excited to be here with you too.
That's called getting out over your skis a little bit, but thanks for picking me up. KP, what's going on, Christy Porter?
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
We're always glad you're with us. KP, if you don't know, is our on-air producer who just kind of keeps us on the straight and narrow all the time.
She does good at it.
So today's episode is a fun one. We are talking not only to business owners, but professionals in our industry as well. If you're a professional in our industry, you may want to be listening from the perspective of learning about the various opportunities that are in our industry. And if you're a business owner, I think you want to stay tuned because we're going to be talking about the various levels of accounting professionals in business. I mean, it may not sound very exciting, Sarah, but it really is.
Oh, but it is. And our guest will make
today.
it very exciting.
Can I do just a brief intro?
I was just going to say, he was going to make it exciting today.
You're going to intro him, but he is, I know this is going to be the cliche, he is the accountant to the accountants. Go for it, Sarah.
Yes. So we are going to be talking about some of the C-suite roles and talking about what a CFO, a Chief Financial Officer is, and a COO, our Chief Operational Officer. We actually have our person on the mic today. He does both roles for CCK.
And does it so well.
And does it fantastically well. We've got Jim Hicks here. Hi, Jim.
What's up, Jim?
Glad to be here. Thanks.
Yes.
What's up, Jimbo?
We're just going to keep
going back and forth. In advance, I'm sorry, Jim.
Yes, KP is getting us. Okay, Jim, you've been at CCK for 3.5 years?
5 years. Thanks, Sarah.
Time flies.
It does. It does fly. I can't believe that.
Keep it running. Keep it running.
All right, you've been here 5 years.
Apparently, I'm the only one that makes mistakes
count
on this podcast, right?
Oh, boom. It came right back at me. It came right back at me.
You know what?
Right. All right, Jim, you've been here for 5 years. I do remember this. I do know how to count. You've been because you started COVID year.
I did. I started January of 2020 and my honeymoon did not last long.
No, it did not. We made you go right in. Society and the culture made you go right into that, didn't they?
It was one of the most interesting times for all of us, but they didn't coach me through that one. You
didn't get that training, Jim?
No, that wasn't on my playbook.
No, not at all. All right. So you've been with us, but you've had a wild and crazy profession, right? Since you've started. So let's talk a little bit about where you started in your professional career.
I started off in public accounting and did that for a couple of years. I did internal audit for 5 years with Citgo, which was at the time headquartered here in Tulsa. And then I took an assignment with Baker Hughes, and I was there for about 10 years and had a wide variety of roles. Pretty interesting situation. I started off as the Russia finance manager, and I was to go to Russia once a quarter.
Wow.
To work with their operations team. No thanks to me, but we signed a contract that doubled the size of our business unit, and I ended up going every month for almost 3 years.
To Russia,
to Siberia.
Did you run into Rocky over there? To Russia with love.
Or Bert Kreischer, maybe?
Seriously, how long of a trip is that?
So it was about a 12-hour trip, but I'd leave Tulsa in the morning, and then I would get there time zone wise the next morning. The hard thing is I would get in, go to the hotel, change clothes,
go right
shower, and I would go to the office because you just have to power through. And that first day was a long day.
How long were you there for, like a week stint?
Yeah, I would normally be there. I'd normally leave on a Monday and come back the following Thursday. So I'd be there for 10 days because you spend so much of your time traveling
right?
That you've got. And I'll be honest, that travel, I learned a whole lot through that time doing all my international travels, not just Russia, but it's tiring and many times it's thankless.
Yeah.
Because you miss a lot at home too.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
that's a
So
downer. Yeah.
after that, then what?
Oh, so, during the 10 years, I was the Russia guy for 3 years. I did, my unofficial title was the high price hitman. And
Nice.
they put me, instead of having special projects, they gave me that assignment and I would go over and clean things up so that the controller didn't have to deal with it. So
Is that air quotes? Clean things up?
Whatever it might mean. There were some turnover that happened in different locations or just big projects that we had going on. And yeah, that was the controller's
Make it like it
title.
never happened.
HR didn't really give me that title.
And I thought this was going to be a boring episode. I'll tell you what. We're already talking Russia. We're talking Siberia.
Right.
Man.
And now we're talking hitman stuff.
Yeah.
Man.
And the
only thing we haven't said is spy. Is that okay to say that?
I think.
I mean, in your
some
I
but
think
if
you
you
need to be
really,
careful
if
what
he
was in
really
it.
was a spy, you couldn't say spy, right?
Right, no.
Right. Even if
that.
okay,
Right.
yeah.
Later on, I got into the mergers and acquisition side, and that was incredibly interesting because I was over in China. We were acquiring a company, and I was working with the owners, trying to understand their business and how the integration plan and all of that. And then for an accountant, when you're sitting there negotiating the price of a large acquisition, that's about as sexy as our profession
Yeah.
gets.
Yes.
What general age were you during this time, Jim?
I was in my 30s.
Okay.
For most of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Then later I was a North America controller and actually a worldwide controller at another firm. So I've done a lot of different things, both on the controlling accounting side, the budget forecast, the operational support. Found myself in some interesting places.
Which we will get to later.
Okay. But that was a lot of the background of what I had before I came here, that people said, well, he does a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, that's kind of why it worked, is because I put myself in interesting positions.
Well, we've kind of had this theme in episodes past that everything and everybody needs accountants. And so I think you're a testimony to that comment, Jim, because it sounds like you got to do some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
I did. And I think some of it was luck. I mean, being in the right place at the right time. Some of it's just my natural personality. I'm not one that shies away from things. So everybody here knows that I kind of jump in, and that really hasn't changed through the years. So you get around interesting people, you get around high-level executives, and you learn exactly how they think. And so it's been a fun journey. It's not one when I was in high school and I said, I think I'm going to go into accounting, that I ever envisioned some of the things that I've done.
Well, maybe we should talk about one of those situations right now before people get,
Nice.
get carried away here. But talk about the Russian mafia. I'm just going to go right into it. I mean, you've got a story about the Russian mafia.
So, well, I've got two, but
Who's counting?
who's counting? Yeah, the first one was actually right before I got there. We changed buildings, and there was a pool hall on the basement or the main level. And one day, the pool hall owner was shot dead, and we weren't able to leave the facility because they were doing the investigation.
Oh.
And he just hadn't paid his monthly due to the Russian mafia. And so it was a real thing. And I was like, okay, again, that's not what we talked about in college accounting classes, how to manage that situation. But Jeff, I think the one that you're referring to, as I said, I traveled every other week. So I would just leave my clothes and stuff. It was professional dress. I'd leave my clothes there at the hotel. And I came back, and one of the times that I was gone, back here in the States, the Russian mob had gone into the hotel and escorted everybody out at gunpoint because the hotel or the Canadian company and the Russian mob were having a dispute over fees that were owed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came back, and the driver, we weren't allowed to drive in Moscow. The driver was taking me to the Marriott, and I said, no, I got to, go to the hotel. And back and forth we went. And finally, he took me to the hotel that was closed, and he thought the American was an idiot. But I didn't have any clothes. All I had was my laptop bag and a change of shorts in case I got stuck.
So your stuff was still at the hotel that they shut down?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Were you able to get it?
So I went in and found a guy that was outside smoking that spoke English. And I explained the situation and went in, and I talked to these individuals. At this time, I have no idea really what's happened. I described what I needed. They went back and got it. And I came back out, and the guy that helped me was like, "Can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Sure." He said, "Are you a model or something?" And I know this is all audio, but I don't look like a model.
Let that one lie.
And he was like, "Why do you have so many clothes?" And here in the States, I had 2 hanging bags. I mean, a couple sport coats, 4 dress shirts, some shoes, etc. Not what we would think of as a lot, but there it was a lot. And then I went to the office after I changed and stuff, and I was like, what's going on? And they freaked out that I had been over there. They said, we set you up at the Marriott. I said, I know. And we couldn't get past the fact that I was like, what's the big deal? And he's like, Jim, you were negotiating with the Russian mob over some really old dress shirts and ties and sport coats. And I was like, well, not only did I negotiate, I won.
That's the important
You
thing.
got your 2 bags. You're hanging bags. Nice.
But you had no idea.
At that time, I had no idea that I was talking to people that had just escorted all the guests out at gunpoint and left them in the parking lot and said, "Good luck."
Wow. That's
not your everyday accounting experience, is it?
No, not at all. That's crazy. That is crazy. Okay, so with these stories, you've done a lot, you've been around a lot, and you've landed here at CCK. Mm-hmm. All right. So when you landed here, so just to kind of put it in context for our listeners, at that time we did not have a CFO. We did not have a chief financial officer, and we hired you to be our CFO. So why? And I mean, Jeff, you can probably help. I mean, hear businesses all the time. They need CFOs. Why do I need a CFO? Yeah. What is a CFO? What do they do? What was it that we needed at CCK to have the need for a CFO?
Yeah, at the time, CCK, and I mean, obviously we're still going through it, but CCK was a fast-growing company. And the owners were very much focused on the client side of our business, which is not unusual, even this, whether it be a public accounting or other industries. The CEO oftentimes gravitates to the sales side, right, the business development side. And so CCK needed somebody to run the business behind that kept the machine going.
Right.
And I remember during my interview, I'm not a very good interviewer. I was like, "You're a bunch of accountants. What do you need a CFO for?" So we had to get through that because I wasn't sure why a bunch of accountants wanted a CFO. But it turned out to be a really good thing because here everybody's wanting to take care of the client. And the business has so many other needs, and you've got to take care of what I call the spine of the organization, or you won't be able to support the sales side.
Right. Okay. So let's get into the meat of what a CFO is and a controller, really, because those two are kind of in our profession could be deemed as something interchangeable. Because at the time we had a controller.
Right.
So I'll put it out there and then you can kind of fill in. So a controller is more backward thinking and a CFO is more forward thinking.
That's true. I think the controller, if I was to probably oversimplify it, is focused on the accuracy of the financials and the internal controls. Mm-hmm. They're making sure that the accounting department is operating correctly. And internal controls is a big thing, okay? Depending on the complexity of the accounting, the controller, you get different levels of controller, but they are responsible for making sure that the financials follow GAAP.
Right.
That's what a controller does. On the CFO side...
Jim, what is GAAP?
I knew Christy was going to ask that question.
This is where Christy comes in. She's working her magic.
Okay, Christy. Generally accepted accounting principles.
Thank you.
So on a CFO side, The CFO is part of an executive team and is much more forward-looking, longer term in nature, and often fills a gap that is on the executive team. But the CFO, historical roles is more strategic thinking and than a controller and more longer term thinking. Depending on the company, you're doing either M&A work, banking work. Oftentimes the forecasting side falls, the budgeting and forecasting side falls under the CFO, that sort of thing.
Nice. Okay. And so we've had, here we have both a controller and a CFO. Can you run a business with one or the other or neither?
Depending on the size of the company, the answer is yes. You can. There's different companies that have any combination. Many times you'll start off with an accounting manager if it's just pretty much running AP, AR, and basic bookkeeping. As you grow and internal controls become a bigger issue for you, and the complexity, the number of transactions, you'll grow into a controller role. The CFO role comes in really is often a need at the executive level and fills a gap in the personality types, is kind of what I found. The CEO is the person that's in charge.
Yeah.
But depending on the makeup of the rest of the executive team, sometimes you need a conservative voice to provide diversity of thought. That's often the CFO. Salespeople tend to be not conservative.
Money spenders. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll have to say this, and Jeff can probably attest to it too. You definitely fill the personality gap here. Right. For sure. Because there's a lot of personalities.
There always are, especially on executive teams.
Yeah.
I've gotten that's one of the things that I was really lucky on as I was younger. Just the positions that I was in, I got to work with executive teams and I saw so many different styles. Everybody ultimately gets their own style, but I got to work with some really great people and understand supply chain vice president and their way of thinking, the sales vice presidents, et cetera, CEOs, engineering, et cetera.
Well, and because it's kind of unique too, in that not only are you looking at financials and how things are moving and manipulating and things, but you're also you're kind of a therapist in a way, right? Because your finances is still an emotional thing, whether it's your own personal finances or a business's. So I feel like you're a little bit of a therapist in that.
You have to be. And whether it's not just a CFO, anyone on the executive team has to be a people person. You have to be able to engage in conversations with all levels of the organization, up and down, no matter where you are, and be a good listener, because you need to understand what the fears are and then what the opportunities are and be able to message that, whether that's within the executive team or across an organization.
One of the things I'm really glad you brought up earlier, Sarah, bringing our experiences as CCK, bringing on our first CFO into the fold, is I think it's an important lesson for our business owner listeners that, not everybody starts off the size of an international oil company.
Right.
They start from the very beginning and they grow their company. I think being a part of the firm at that point in time, what I saw was something that any entrepreneur runs into. It's that E-Myth revisited, where they do what they know how to do because it's what they've done their whole life. But as the business starts to grow, it starts to take over, and they can't do what they were created to do as much. And so, like Jim said, it's a situation where we kind of got to the point where it was starting to take, especially on a few of the partners, starting to take a little bit of the focus away from the clients.
Right.
And so in order to get back focusing not only on the clients, but our culture and our people, we needed someone that could go ahead and step in and take care of these things. And so, Jim, with what you've seen and running in your circles, how does that usually transpire in like a smaller company as they grow and bring on this type of role?
Yeah, CCK 5 years ago wasn't in a different spot than how I would answer that. Oftentimes the CEO, in our case, the partners, but the CEO gets too stretched because he or she's trying to do too many things. Depending on what their area is, right? Their background might be on the sales side. And so they naturally gravitate to that and they leave something else not getting deserved attention. And the CFO, just because of our finance and accounting backgrounds, we're normally pretty structured thinkers. Right. And so that is oftentimes the gap that an executive team needs to bring in. The CFO is the title for it, but really they're trying to bring in that structure and get the investments necessary to achieve the long-term goals.
So really it's a situation is when you start noticing that there's gaps that are forming. I mean, you could start with any entrepreneurial business owner. They get to a point pretty early where they're like, I don't want to keep QuickBooks. I don't want to do financials. So I'm going to bring in a controller. And then they get to the point where they need that forward-thinking person so they can focus on their business. And so that's probably the time they need to bring in a CFO. Is that about right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so on that question, if you've already got somebody in place as a controller, can they turn into a successful CFO in that same business? I mean, in that same company, business model line, everything. Is it easy for that to transition?
The easy answer to say is yes. But I think a lot of it depends on the personality type of, in this case, the controller.
Mm-hmm.
Many controllers come up and are conservative. Accountants have a stereotype for a reason, right? Accountants by nature don't like to be out and be the face in the party, et cetera, and kind of drift back.
Mm-hmm.
Those type of people are not ideal candidates for CFO roles. You need to be somebody who can motivate people that don't necessarily fall in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be comfortable in all levels.
Right.
So some controllers have that personality type. It's normally not a technical skill gap.
Right.
There's some, okay?
Right.
But normally it's not that. Normally it's the fit at an executive level thinking that stops some people from going controller to CFO.
Okay. All right.
At the same time, you normally don't just walk in to a CFO position having never been a controller.
Correct.
I would think.
Correct.
Yeah. So Jim, I have a question for you. As you're developing this, as a business is growing and you have this controller and then you think you need a CFO of some kind, how does the fractional CFO kind of play into that? Is that like a normal step prior to bringing on a full-time CFO?
It can be. So a lot of times what you'll see on the fractional CFO is, depending on the company, they've got loans with banks and they've got to make maybe a quarterly presentation to the bank or a quarterly presentation to the board. They're not large enough where they can afford both a controller and a CFO, but they need a little extra periodically. And so they might bring in a fractional CFO to help them with some of those either one-time tasks or recurring tasks that don't happen necessarily on a daily, weekly basis.
Basically a CFO for hire.
Yeah.
Hitman.
That would have been a good time to have that. All right. So you're also in a very unique position within our firm where you're not only the CFO, you're also our COO. You are our Chief Operational Officer. Now, this is where I get eyes glazed over because I don't know really what the role of a COO is. I just know that you're fun to work with.
Well, thanks.
And sometimes you tell me what to do and I don't like it. But
self-assurance.
Right. So what is a COO? Like, what is the day-to-day of a COO?
Actually, that's the exact definition.
Nice.
The COO is really responsible for the daily operations and making sure that things are running smoothly and doing continuous improvement on our processes, right? And so obviously, depending on the size of the organization, that can grow quite a bit. But the strictest sense is they're in charge of the daily operations. The difference between the COO and the CFO is the CFO is normally looking a little further out the windshield and talking about long-term strategy.
Compared to a COO.
Correct.
Okay. So what like you're saying day to day, but you're not, I've seen you're not into really day to day operations. You're kind of managing those. It kind of is a trickle down effect, right?
Yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that applies to every COO in every company and organization. So depending on the size of the organization, and I think a lot of times you might want a COO first or a CFO first. There's not a standard playbook that you have. Oftentimes, those are the number 2 and number 3 positions at a company, but depending on the company, they can alternate.
Okay.
So that depends as well. But the COO is more making sure that we're doing everything that we need to on a daily basis to achieve those goals. And it's just like stacking possessions in basketball.
I wonder what just happened yesterday. But but this episode won't be dropping until, but we are referring to
The Oklahoma City Thunder.
yes, so,
Champions.
Yes, that just happened yesterday.
They're in Oklahoma, right? Just down the street from Tulsa.
Right. All right, but so how does the CFO and the COO complement each other? Like, how do you work with you?
Do you guys split personalities?
Yeah.
Do you keep a mirror in your office? And
Me,
speak?
myself, and I, we each
Stop.
have 8-hour
Let's look at
shifts.
this.
Yes.
Now, that gets into it. It really depends on the organization, right? Because you can have a director of supply chain, director of engineering, vice president, whatever.
Right.
And so the CFO is often the conservative voice. And then the COO is the pragmatic, trying to get everything done. And then you always have the sales guy that says, we're going to achieve everything until you put together his bonus metrics, and then it's sandbag city.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of like, I mean, you're just telling, you're like, hey, don't spend this, but yeah, you really can spend this.
Right.
You're having those conversations with yourself.
A little bit. To use a manufacturing example, right? You're trying to decide whether or not to make a capital purchase to automate something. Well, the COO and the CFO are going to work hand in hand on that evaluation of the project.
Okay.
And so if you're just one person, you shouldn't get in an argument with yourself, but it happens.
So I have a question, Jim. We've already talked about a lot of different letters, but where does the CEO come into play compared to a COO? So instead of a chief operating officer, we have a chief executive officer.
The chief executive officer is the top person. Top dog. And so he or she's the one really directing everything. And you always want the CEO to look good. Okay. And a lot of times the CFO has to wear the black hat because we can't afford this. That's a CFO message, because the CEO always wants to come off to the employees and the industry and the marketplace, the banks, whoever, as being the optimist.
Okay.
And so you have to have a good working relationship between the CEO and CFO. The CFO needs to understand their role. And sometimes that's wearing the black hat that the CEO is asking you to wear.
I see. So you play a role as the CFO. That's how the CFO and the CEO may complement each other.
Absolutely.
It sounds like good cop, bad cop.
A little bit.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Many times it is.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So in this, and part of so those that are listening that are in the professional career, they, I hear in our profession that a lot of people that I'm going to go start at a Big 4 accounting firm. I'm going to get that tax or audit work under my belt. And then I'm going to go and I'm just going to go be a CFO in 4 years.
Probably not going to happen that way.
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, in your profession, what I heard about your professional background, I didn't hear any tax in any of that.
I have no tax knowledge.
No tax knowledge.
Yeah.
You have audit. You did do audit.
I've done audit, but no, tax is not my forte. And that's one of the challenges. You're probably not going to check every box, right? Whether it be tax is a weak point of mine. I would also say insurance is an area, right?
Mhm.
Other people might have banking. You're probably not going to have checked every box before you become CFO for the first time.
Right. So what kind of advice would you give? Because I've heard in all of this, I've heard you say, I put myself out there and got a lot of experience in a bunch of different areas. Where would you tell somebody to say, hey, I've done my time in public accounting, quote unquote. Where would you go from there just to help gain that experience to really, if their end goal really is to be a CFO or COO? And that's two different paths.
But I think number one is putting yourself in positions that you don't know the answer to. And that can happen, even if somebody starts off in public accounting and they're like, I want to be a CFO. Well, what did I say? You have to be able to go influence people. You have to go talk to clients. You have all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put yourself out of your comfort zone. That's not something most accountants find natural.
Truth. Right, Jeff?
Amen, sister.
So I think that's my number one piece of advice is do something you don't know how to do, because otherwise, use the example of a teacher, you can't do the same lesson plan year after year and say you have 30 years of experience.
Right.
You have 1 year of experience 30 times.
Ooh, that's good. Insightful.
Well, one of the things that I was wondering about is, can someone grow through these different levels, or are they kind of always stuck at a certain level? And what I hear you saying is, in order to go to the next level, it's a matter of gaining that experience, doing stuff that you've never done before, expanding your horizons, so to say. I mean, it is obviously a knowledge thing.
Absolutely.
But also it's working with different people and different experiences in order to grow.
I personally was not that smart, and I need to learn from a lot of smart people to advance my career. And I had the opportunity to do that, but I also sought out that opportunity through the various roles and positions I had. But somebody with the same job title that I had did not have the same experiences because they might have stayed behind their computer and worked on their spreadsheet.
While you're going to talk to the Russians.
Yes.
Well, Jim, you also, you have some attributes that not many business leaders have in general that make you special. You compared to your classmates at the University of Tulsa.
There you go.
If you look at that and you look at what they've done, it's your special attributes that have made you the rock star that you are, that's made you progress. I would say I'm thinking of a couple, but what do you think some of those attributes are that have set you apart from a lot of your peers?
Gosh, I kind of
it is. You're really,
Yes,
we're asking you to brag on yourself because we're going to pipe in.
Yeah.
So one of the things, and I would say this self-reflection, I was more of this typical accountant coming out, and not completely typical, but I got confidence. And once you get that confidence, you kind of realize nobody expects me to know the answer to everything. And being able to say, I don't know, and not think of yourself as a failure with that, but also following up, I will find out. I have plenty of experiences where I didn't know what they were even at, what the question was that I'd just been asked, but I found out, and people like that. And most executives that I've ever worked with, if you're putting forth the effort, they'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you got to do some hard work. And if you help them, they will help you. And you can learn a lot from leaders that have already been there. But you have to put yourself in that spot.
I would say, if I could speak into that, you guys, I think you have a lot of gumption. I do. I think you have a lot of gumption.
That's an Oklahoma word.
It is. It is. I remember reading it to my little girls when they were little. It was about this little girl that had different gifts, and her special gift was gumption. And so I always think about that. Someone who can figure something out, who has the competencies, but you combine those two gifts, and it's almost as if the sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say accountants, want to have every I dotted, every T crossed. That's kind of who we are. You have to get comfortable with, you know what? I've got 80% of it figured out. Let's go with it, and I'll figure out the rest of the 20% driving 80 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. And that's a skill that not many accountants have, certainly early on. So you got to develop that confidence that I don't have to have everything figured out.
Yeah. I will also say too that you also have a really good way of looking at people. You've learned how to analyze the numbers. You've learned how to analyze processes, but you've also learned how to analyze people and see strengths in them and then give them the encouragement to use those strengths. I do think you have a knack for seeing people.
Yeah. And I think that's important, whether you're talking about a CEO, right, a CFO, a COO. You have to be a people leader and inspire people. It's a little easier to do it at a department level, right? When you're a department manager, wherever it is, mm-hmm, you can inspire that group because they kind of have to listen to you.
Right.
But get out of that comfort zone again and just your department and start talking to and with other people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're also in that you're also inspiring your peers. I mean, you're on the executive team and all those in your day to day, you're also helping push them and be like, you need to do this. You should be doing this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Jim, let's say I'm a younger person and maybe I'm even in college and I'm towards my junior or senior year and I'm looking at doing some sort of internship. Aside from applying at some place like CCK, what would you recommend to somebody that just doesn't really know what they want to do in the profession? Would you encourage them to get involved in on the industry side then as an intern to see if they might ultimately want to be a controller or CFO of some kind?
I personally didn't have it all figured out when I was 20, and I'm not saying that I have it all figured out. But you do now. I'm not saying I do now.
He reserves the right to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what? One of the things that if I was to go back in time, as a kid, we didn't even get on an airplane. I mean, so some of the things that we do today, I couldn't even imagine. But there's opportunities to do a study abroad program. You want to talk about getting out of your comfort zone? You come out of those type of programs, a semester abroad, and that is so attractive to an employer. And it has nothing to do with
knowledge of the actual industry
of Italy, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're willing to do that, you're probably willing to do so many things.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel is your crowning achievement as a COO?
I think for me, I've worked at some large companies and I worked with some great people and I learned a lot. And I came to CCK, and CCK is smaller than those companies that I had been at, right? That's my story. That's not necessarily the playbook. It's just my story. But I got to take so many things that I had seen, and we all have been there. We've all sat in the meetings and go, well, if they just put me in charge, right?
Put me in, coach.
Put me in, coach, and I would do it differently. And so I really learned in those experiences why they made the decisions, not just the decisions that they made, but why they made those decisions. And I've been able to apply that here. And truthfully, that's what I'm proud of is for the first time going through as CFO and COO, I didn't have those titles before I came to CCK. I've been able to contribute. I've never had the imposter syndrome that I didn't belong.
That's pretty deep.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say that, Jim, if I was to do it all over again, I feel like I'd land where I am now. And I think there's a message there for young professionals in school that there's just so many different things to do when you come out of school and graduate. Of course, we're going to highly recommend the certification approach, but there's so many things to do. And just because you land in one place the first time doesn't mean you're stuck there your whole life. You could be in public and decide to go industry, or industry and decide to go public. There's just so many different places to go. And the other thing too is from a business owner's perspective that it's not a one size fits all, that you go from an accountant to a controller to a CFO. I mean, they may skip a beat there because of massive growth or something like that. I just think that the accounting profession as a whole has so many different opportunities in it, and not more so than a lot of different industries out there.
No matter what, right? Every single business has one common language, whether it be manufacturing, whether it be sales. It all comes down to, you better understand how you make money. And that's where the accountant or the financial professional comes in, because a lot of your operations people are really good at selling, but they don't know how we make money, how we make profit. And every single CEO talks that language. So way back when, that was my role. It was just simply partnering with the operations people to make sure that they understood what actions they needed to take to make money. And it was that simple. And that made them look good when they were talking ultimately to the CEO.
Well, you kind of surprised me there, because I thought all you needed was love. But I guess you need to know how you make your money, right? Well, we appreciate everything that you do here in our office, Jim. I know we've kind of teased you a little bit here and there, but you do bring an element of change and a different voice, a different personality. And I think one of the things that stood out to me was the way you talked about bringing all those emotions together, all those personalities together in order to agree to go in the same direction. Not everybody needs to agree, but there needs to be a collective decision that's made by those individuals, and to play a role to grab all those people and go in the one direction is a talent. And you have that, and we appreciate you. But we appreciate you so much that I think Sarah has some questions for you.
I do. It's our time for rapid fire. All right. So I got some questions for you off the cuff. Okay. What is your dream client location to work? Where would you want to work in all the world?
I'm going to say Italy. I love to I've been there twice. It's an incredible country.
Oh, nice. Okay. So now we're going to get into some weird stuff. Budget meetings or team huddles? Would you rather be in a budget meeting, or would you rather have a team huddle?
I'll go team huddle.
Okay.
No one wants budget meetings.
All right. In your day, do you like spreadsheets or talking about processes?
Always talking.
Yes, I can attest to that. All right. How many stamps are in your passport?
So the passport that I had the most, I had 97 in that 10-year passport, and my daughter counted them up. And then I was disappointed that I'd never counted them. I was like, well, I should have gotten 3 more.
Right? Round that out. All right. Last one. Which Hogwarts house are you in? Do you remember?
It's okay if you don't know.
Or no, if you're Slytherin.
I don't remember, and that's going to upset my daughter.
It really is. This is not the one.
Yeah.
What would she say?
I think she's Ravenclaw.
Mm-hmm.
What are
Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, Ravenclaw.
I think I'm Gryffindor.
Okay. All right. I see that.
See, I finally had a conversation with one of my oldest daughter. I said, which house am I? Because I have no idea which ones are out there. And she said, I'd be Hufflepuff or whatever it is.
I'm a Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuff. So it's okay if you don't know.
I remembered my daughters. I couldn't remember mine.
That says something about that relationship.
Yes.
It really does.
It does. It does.
In addition to being a great CFO and COO, Jim is an incredible father and a husband. So
yes.
That's the number one job.
That's
right.
It. Amen.
That's it.
Amen. All right. Well, that is our episode for 2 CPAs and a mic. And we are, Jeff, you're just going to have to do this. He asked, for all of our listeners out there,
maybe sometimes you will appreciate who I am and what I can do.
He said, will you wrap this up? And I said, sure, I can do that. Jim, I absolutely cannot.
Jim, we are so glad you made it today, and we love having you with us. If you want to talk to Jim Hicks in any way, shape, or form, email us at podcast@cckcpa.com. If you want to tell Sarah how horrible her closings are, you can email us at podcast@cckcpa.com. Give us a like, give us a review, do all that kind of fun stuff. Special thanks to CCK Strategies. Jim, you were one of those people that saw what we wanted to do here and got behind it, and we thank you for that. To Christy Porter, thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrow. Clarence Fisher with Tulsa Internet Marketing Services, our wise sage, and our two amazing administrative assistants, Natalie Renfro and Emily Johansson. Thank you for getting our ball across the goal every time. We hope that you are able to join us next time when these two CPAs have a chat and you get to find out who's on the mic.
The information provided on this podcast is for general, informational, and educational purposes only and does not constitute accounting, tax, legal, or financial advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations change and individual circumstances vary. Always consult with a qualified CPA or professional advisor before making any financial or business decisions. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organizations they are affiliated with. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-accountant relationship. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to those terms. And that's a wrap for this episode of Two CPAs in the Mic. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Have questions or ideas for a topic? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@cckcpa.com.